Hello, ladies and gentlemen. You know, throughout the years, we've seen some pretty odd things in the gaming history. It's whether it's something that happened recently or eons ago. It's stuff that we look back on and go, "What the hell was that?" You know, that's what I want to talk about today. I have a few different topics or ideas for these things. Um, the first one is loot boxes. Now, let's be honest, microtransactions are never going away. Game companies make too much money off of them. Hell, sometimes they make more money off those rather than the game sales themselves. Um, and it's like, I get it. Like, I know game development is obviously a lot more expensive than it used to be. Um, and it was nice. It's nice when, like, sometimes microtransactions, if it's like it adds something new to the game, okay. But it's annoying when it's something that's like should have been in the game to begin with. Like take what was it? I think Street Fighter V. The arcade mode was sold separately as DLC. Like really, Capcom? But that kind of leads into the whole loot boxes thing, which maybe you never heard of them or forgot. And now you're pissed because I'm bringing them up again. Anyway, loot boxes were a way of unlocking content in games, whether it be new characters, alternate costumes, weapon skins, etc. And usually it was the same idea for each game, but sometimes the type of box would be different, or you would use like different points or whatever. So the way it worked was each game had usually like 3 different types of loot boxes, and then you'd buy them via in-game currency, which we'll call coins in this case, or you could use real life money with like your credit or debit card, which is kind of what they wanted you to do, but which we'll get to more on that in a bit. So let's say you have like bronze, silver, and gold. A bronze loot box would be 1,000 coins or $1, and it has like 50% common items. No, 60% common items, 30% uncommon, and 10% rare. Then did I say it? Yeah, $1 or 1,000 coins. Then you have a silver loot box, which would be $5 or 5,000 coins, and it would be like let's see, like 35% uncommon, 50% uncommon, and then 15% rare. And then gold loot boxes would be $10 or 10,000 coins, and then the whole percentage thing with the common, uncommon, rare. You get the idea. I suck at math, but you know what I'm going with this. It'd be like 30% rare, 50% uncommon. You know what I mean. Like I said, I suck at math, but so let's say there was an item you really wanted that was rare. Your best bet to get it would be buying a gold pack. So you have 2 choices: either grind like hell, which could take maybe over a week because you have to take in consideration like your work schedule and other responsibilities like laundry, dishes, mow the lawn, trim the hedges. You get the idea. Or you could just use your credit or debit card and pay $10 for a gold pack, which, like I said, that's kind of what they were hoping for. That's why they were designed this way, because they know everyone doesn't have the patience or time to grind like hell to try and get these things. And obviously it's not the developers. It's usually like the CEOs that come up with these ideas and force the developers to do these things. I mean, sure, maybe there are some rare occasions where developers are like, they're playing that shit, but most of the time it's the higher-ups that plan this shit. But anyway, so yeah, that was what loot boxes, like how they were designed that way and shit with, and it was funny, people kind of took a stand against them. Consumers were boycotting games that had loot boxes. Some companies that featured them in their games were being sued. Hell, one country banned loot boxes entirely. And then there was the whole thing with the Star Wars Battlefront game that relied heavily on loot boxes, and it was just a complete broken mess. And EA got this massive backlash from Disney and shit, and it was just, the whole thing was such a mess. So loot boxes just basically to to alter a quote from Obi-Wan, now loot boxes are all but extinct. Like, I mean, sure, there might be some new games here and there that still have them, but for the most part, they're pretty much dead. And obviously, if you have a game that came out like 10 years ago that's online multiplayer and you use loot boxes to unlock stuff, and the servers for the game are still up, obviously, there's that, but most newer games don't really have them. The next thing is pornographic Atari games. Yeah, that was a thing. So this was before my time. This was like the early 80s, late 70s, something like that. I was born in 87, so it was before my time, but I'm still aware of it. So it was like, now when you think about like the Atari 2600, the graphics are kind of like, they look like if you made figures out of like single pieces of like solid Lego pieces. Like if you took like a bunch of Lego bricks, if you took like a bunch of blue or green Lego bricks and then just made one figure or something out of it, that's kind of what Atari graphics looks like, which is okay. It has like this kind of special charm to it that you have to use your imagination. But it's like, why would you make porno games of that? I mean, obviously, there's always going to be, like, porn and overly sexualized characters in games and stuff. And hell, look at Lara Croft for, in Tomb Raider. Especially, like, even going back to the original PlayStation when her boobs were literally triangles. But you're always going to see that shit in gaming. But it's like, why on the Atari? It's all pixelated blocks. Like I said, it looks like they look like figures made out of Legos. And I don't mean minifigures, I mean, like, figures made out of Lego bricks. It's like, why would you make pornography? I could think of two possibilities. One, people did it to be funny or edgy or something like that, which, okay, I like edgy humor as much as the next guy. The other is, there are people who would actually jack off to that, which, okay, like, now I'm not one to kink shame, but there are some things that I'll kind of raise an eyebrow at, like, and that being one of them. Like, if people actually jacked off to that, I'm like, okay, that's a little weird. But, yeah. The next two things are Nintendo related. The first was their whole YouTube policy. This happened about, I think it was 2014, I want to say, where basically they made like this partner program on YouTube where if you wanted to basically use their game, play footage and stuff on YouTube, you had to sign up for this special Nintendo program. So it was like the money. First off, you could only make Nintendo content. You couldn't talk about any others like Sony or Microsoft or whatever. And so then it was like, where was I going with this? Oh yeah, and then when you made a video, they had to review it and whether they approved of it or not, and then they would, they were like, okay, that's fine, you can put that out, or vice versa, like they wouldn't do that, say no. And then the money, if anything, would be divided between the content creator, YouTube, and Nintendo, opposed to just being between Nintendo and the content creator. I mean, YouTube and the content creator, excuse me. And it was great, and it was like, there were some people who would actually defend, there were people who not only signed up for it, there were people who would like try and justify it, and it's like, why? I remember there was, because obviously a lot of YouTubers called Nintendo out on this, and there was, I forget who it was, but there was one person who made a video on it and made a lot of great points. Obviously brought up the whole free advertising thing, which is true. Literally the last game I bought because of a commercial I saw on TV was Dragon Quest IX for the DS, and that was back in 2010. Like, I'm sure a lot of you, it's like how many of you have bought when was the last time you bought a game because of a commercial you saw on TV? Most of us buy games from what we see on YouTube, whether it be new or old. It's like we see somebody do a review of a game or a Let's Play or whatever, and we're like, ooh, that game sounds pretty good, or that looks kind of cool, I might have to check it out. But, Nintendo was like, nope. it was like, but anyway, going back to that video, and like person was saying how it was free advertising, and then people in the comment section were saying the same thing. And I remember there was this one person who was like trying to like, normally I don't pay any attention to these people, but there's one comment from this, or reply in this case, that from this person that always kind of stood out to me. It's like, don't give me that free advertising crap. And it's like, what? Like, why? It's the truth. Like, how is it? I don't know. People like that, it's like, I don't get it. Like, how can you be that? You know, I'll just say it. How can you be that stupid? And I remember, it was funny because this, like, I think I said, it started in 2014 and went on for a few years or whatever, and then until they finally canned the idea. And it was 2016 when the first Mario Maker came out, and you know, it's funny, like, looking back, some people were saying, like, that game was so perfect for YouTube. I mean, granted, now we have a sequel that came out a few years ago, and maybe we'll see a new one on the Switch too, but think about when it was a brand new thing, like, that had never really been, technically had never been seen before. I mean, sure, there's games like it and stuff, but, and it was like, it was so perfect for YouTube, and maybe it wouldn't have saved the Wii U, but it might have moved another 1 million units or so, because, like I said, the next thing is Nintendo Labo. So this was a thing that I don't even remember. I think it only lasted like a year or two, and it was funny. Like, people, like, I think most people just kind of forgot about it because it was so short-lived. But what it was it was a game that had all these. It was a game that had all these little programs in it, and then it came with cardboard, like, pieces that you would make into these little model things. Like, there was a piano, a fishing pole, this little, like, remote control creature thing, and it was just, it was, I don't know, but it was one of those things that, like, I didn't hate the idea, but it was just like, I mean, I never played it, to be honest. I never bought it even, but because when I was a kid, I loved using my imagination. I would take, like, and playing with, like, cardboard and stuff, because I would take, like, big cardboard boxes and make, like, bases for G.I. Joes and stuff. I remember maybe they still have these where you are, guys, you know, different parts of the country or different countries in general, but you remember when your family would order pizza and they'd have, like, those little plastic-looking table things sticking out of them? Like I said, I don't see them here anymore, but maybe some of you guys do in other states or countries and stuff, but I remember one time I took a bunch of those and glued them into a box to make, like, a little spike pit, you know, because this was during the Mortal Kombat craze. It was the mid-90s. And one time I took an egg carton and made it into, like, a bus for my minifigures. Another time I took another egg carton and, like, decorated it to, like, a little prehistoric playset type thing, because I had, like, these little miniature dinosaurs and stuff. But point is, I loved doing that stuff as a kid. So with the whole Labo thing, I was like, my inner child was kind of like, oh, that's kind of cool, but the adult part of me was like, I don't know, it's kind of weird. And the thing with it was fun. I think it was like $70 or $80. So a lot of people used to say it was expensive cardboard, which, granted, it's a game and the cardboard, but still. And I get what they were going for. It was like, you know, for, like, obviously meant to be like a fun family project, like arts and crafts and this type of stuff. But one of the things was, like, how do you store this without it getting damaged? I know a lot of people say it was like, oh, it's very durable cardboard. And it's like, yeah, but it's still cardboard. Like, because the thing with gimmicks, it's like they're fun for a while, but then you just get kind of bored with them. Like, even things like the Super Scope for the Super Nintendo, I loved that when I was a kid, but it's like, yeah, it's fun for a while, and then it gets kind of boring. Same with, like, the Mario Paint mouse and things like that. And, you know, then, like, you get the idea. NES had things like the Robot, the Power Pad, and stuff like that. GameCube had the Donkey Kong bongo drums. Like, these things, it's like, they're fun for a while, and then it's just kind of like the charm kind of wears off. And they end up under your bed or in a closet or whatever, but it's like, so it's like, how do you store this Labo? How do you store it without it getting damaged? Like, I mean, are you going to take it apart and put it in a box or something, and then, you know, if you want to play it again, you got to put it back together? Or it's like, what if you didn't take it apart and you just put it all down the basin and you have a flood? It's going to get destroyed. But, yeah, that whole thing was just, I don't know. And the last thing, which is kind of an ongoing thing, and that's censorship in games. Unfortunately, that's always going to be a thing, because same with, like, cancel culture, because that's been going on for as long as far back as I can remember, honestly, but, well, maybe not that far back, because when I was a little kid, you don't really think about that stuff, but, well, yes and no, because, I mean, like, when I think back to things like Beavis and Butthead and Ren and Stimpy back in the early, mid-90s, parents were always freaking out over that. I remember around to the tail end of the 90s when Pokemon became a huge global phenomenon, and parents were trying to get that canceled, or maybe not just parents, but people in general were trying to get it canceled because they were like, oh, it's teaching kids about animal cruelty, it's like, teaching kids to keep animals in containment and then make them fight each other and stuff, and then, there was the recall on the Pokeballs from Burger King. How just a few years later, the new craze was Harry Potter, and again, this was the early 2000s, and again, people were like, oh, it's teaching kids like satanic witchcraft, so we gotta cancel Harry Potter, boycott Harry Potter, and it's just like, oh my god. But the point is, this stuff has always been going on, and it's just, we hear about it more now because of the internet and social media. Information spreads a lot faster. If somebody wants to write a petition to get something banned, rather than just going around their neighborhood, they can put it on the internet. Hell, another example is Mighty Max. That was one of my favorite shows of all time, and one of my favorite shows of my childhood was Mighty Max, and I didn't even know about this till like 12, 13 years ago, but that show actually had a lot of trouble staying on the air because it was so dark and graphic and violent. Like, if you go back, a lot of the episodes are here on YouTube. Actually, I think the whole series is on YouTube, but if you go back and watch it, some of it's like, wow, this is pretty graphic and stuff for a kid's show, but it didn't really turn anybody into serial killers or anything like that. And the thing with censorship in games, like, for me, it really depends on what it is. Like, in most cases, it's, like I said, it depends on what it is. Like, whether it bothers me or not. Like, going back to Mortal Kombat, the first one when it was ported to the home consoles back in the early 90s, and it was like, the Super Nintendo took out the blood and altered the fatalities. Yeah, that annoyed me, because that's, like, the core part of the game. Or it's like, imagine if they made a Tomb Raider game where Lara Croft had this very provocative, overly sexualized jump, and there's certain parts in the game where you have to use this jump to get across, like, a certain gap or up a pillar or whatever. It's like you can only get through certain areas with this jump. But then it's like in certain regions or whatever, they took the jump out of the game because it's offensive. So you wouldn't be able to play the game because you can't use the jump or whatever. See, like, that's censorship like that is annoying when it affects, like, part of the story or core gameplay. But when it's like little teeny things that are just like a little bonus thing or whatever, it doesn't really bother me that much. Like, a perfectly good example is the recent Dragon Quest III remaster. The female warrior and jester, they made their outfits less revealing, and it's like, that doesn't really bother me that much. For one thing, it's a pixelated game, like, and it's not like it's altering the story or anything. Or it's like, I remember, I think it was like 10 years ago. Jeez, was it really 10 years ago? It was Fire Emblem Birthright. No, Fire Emblem Fates, excuse me, because there was like two different versions. It was Birthright and Conquest. Because some of the Fire Emblem games have like a marrying feature in it, there was a mini game in that where you could basically pet your partner, your wife or husband or whatever. You could pet them. It was like, okay, kind of like the Nintendogs game. It was like, okay, which apparently they took it out of the US version, and a lot of people were upset about it. And it's just like, okay, I mean, it doesn't affect the story, the main story or anything. Like, and it's, you know what? I'm just gonna say it. There's real women out there, and real men too, whatever your sexual preference is. Like, so it's like, I don't know, but yeah, those are just some of the things that I think were just really weird stuff through gaming and history and stuff. Is there any more you could think of, or maybe you have more to say on the ones that I talked about? Let me know in the comments section below. And as always, thanks for watching.